Greetings. Let's talk. One of the drawbacks to having been in the society as long as I have is there are a lot of topics that you don't realize could use an explanation for newer members. And one of those came up the other day in a conversation. I was like, oh, wow, wait, we need to talk about this. And that's gating into an event or trolling into an event. That's another verbiage you hear here in Onsteora a lot. So let's talk. Let's talk about that because it's we do it all the time. We all talk about it, but we don't explain it very often. And there's not really a good concise explanation about what it is. So first of all, let's get some vocabulary out of the way because if you're a new member or you've only been attending a couple of meetings or whatever, some of these words may not register accurately for the conversation we're going to have. First of all, events. In the SCA, for this conversation, there really are two categories of activities we go to. You have a lot of local activities. You have fighter practices, arts and sciences, A&S classes, populace meetings, officer meetings. And these are all usually general local get-togethers. Sometimes there's a regional fighter practice where people from all over, like the northern part of a state or a city or whatever, from multiple groups will get together at a public park or whatever, armor up and go practice. And generally speaking, with very, very few exceptions, these are all free to attend. No one cares if you're a member. There's no expectation of membership, and for a lot of them, this is kind of 50-50. For a lot of them, there's not even garb required. Some of them, however, the local culture does expect you to wear garb if it's possible. But that's kind of the local backbone of any group is their meetings, their practices, and so forth. And we call them practices or meetings or classes. There's a whole bunch of verbiage, but they are all various local activities, get-togethers, hangouts, so forth. Then you have events. Now, an event, separate from all of that, an event is almost always at some sort of event ground, whether that is an indoor event where you're renting an armory or a classroom building or a convention center, or some of the larger ones will sometimes reserve blocks of convention rooms in a hotel, that kind of thing. And it is usually put on by one group, whether that is a local group or a regional group like a principality like we have here in Onsteora, or sometimes it's a kingdom event where the kingdom itself, the kingdom officers will administer and run the event. And that event, you are expected to wear garb. There are usually a set schedule of activities, and relevant to this conversation, there is a charge to get in almost always. And when I say there's a charge to get in, everyone pays. The people running the event pay to get in. And there's usually a very, very small list of people who are compensated. It means they are not charged. And every group, every unit within the SCA has different rooms. It's usually put in financial policy, like we don't charge the king to get into an event, or the queen. We don't charge the prince and princess, that kind of thing. But the officers, the volunteers, the cooks, the fee servers, they all pay to get in. Everyone pays to get in. Now, why do we charge to get into an event? There's a couple of reasons here. First of all, the event site itself usually costs money. So the local group or the hosting group has probably written a not small check just to be able to have this event. There's usually a pretty substantial outlay of consumables, toilet paper, hand soap, sideboard items, water-bearing items. Those all cost money, and those are usually a line item on the budget. And it's usually a three-figure budget. Maybe it's $100, maybe it's $5, depending on how big the event is. But the point is that costs money. And also, on top of all that, the hosting group has its own annual expenses it has to account for. My barony, for example, we have several pavilions that we are maintaining. We have several pieces of equipment that we need to sometimes replace, like water jugs for our own water bearing, loaner armor for both the chivalric and the rapier communities. And we have full kits of armor that people can borrow when they're first starting out, and that's purchased by the barony. So the income from the event, the profits from that event, go into a SCA specific bank account registered in the SCA's name, the local group's name, and those profits are what help the group function over the course of the next 6 months to a year. For groups that have 2 events a year, it's 2 income streams, but there are some groups that only have 1 event a year, and so their budget is limited to what they make at that event and whatever donations they may get from their members. That is how the group finances its own infrastructure. So that is why events are, from a practical standpoint, are so important, because that represents the revenue stream that that hosting group needs to function for the next year. So all that being said, how do we handle payments? And that's called gating in. Now, gating, or sometimes called trolling in, and maybe you have different verbiage where you are, but in Onstiora it's gating or trolling, and we're going to talk about those 2 words. The older term was trolling, and now we're very, very slowly starting to shift over to gating in. Now, gating is more accurate because it invokes a city gate or some sort of castle gate that you have to check in at to get in and gain access to what's inside, which that's kind of the concept here. Is the gate is where you go in to pay for site access, and then you have to sign a few forms, and then you're given a receipt for your purchase. Then you can go in and enjoy the event. Trolling in is the same process. The trolling comment, as I understand it, because this actually predates when I first started, was invoking the idea of a bridge troll collecting taxes, kind of the Billy Goat's Gruff imagery of a big troll demanding you pay him or he won't let you cross the bridge. And that's kind of the inside joke there. Because of the word troll and its connotations today in a social media sphere, we're moving away from it, and appropriately, I would say. But that brings us to, how do you gate in? Now, I'm going to draw from my experience in the SCA. I'm 100% sure there are variations on this. I'm 100% sure there are places in the SCA where this is not accurate, but I'm going to give it the best shot. This is representative of Onstiora and my experiences in Callantyre, and a couple of other kingdoms at select events that I've been to, including a couple of known world events. So, first of all, gate is usually located someplace logistically obvious. Now, what do I mean by that? For a lot of events, for a lot of camping events, gate is either going to be set up right by the parking lot or in some location central to the camp. That has been my experience. It may not be the first thing you come across after you park your vehicle, but for some of our campsites, it's in one end of the main hall, and the main hall is the largest structure on site, so it's fairly self-evident where you are going. Some events are really good about setting up signs that say gate that way, that kind of thing. Others, it's just kind of understood you're going to the main hall. For indoor events, or for one-day events, for events that are set up in classroom buildings or community centers, that type of thing, gate is very generally right by the main entryway. You walk in and there is either a row of tables right there in front of you, or there is a sign pointing you to another room immediately attached to that entryway with a row of tables waiting for you. And when all else fails, especially if you get there in the first half of the day, first few hours in the morning, look for the line of people. Most gates have a line of people lining up to go and gate in. So, you're gating in. First of all, there's no requirement. You don't have to be in garb to pay money. We're not that militaristic. But very, very often you will see people in garb in a line to get in. And do you have to gate in before anything else? No. If you are carrying in a load of stuff, if you are offloading for a display, if you are dropping off armor in preparation for a tournament or something like that, you absolutely can go take care of that and go gate in when you're done there. We want you to be expedient, but there's a practicality side of this. You don't need to feel like, all else must halt and time must stand still until you gate in. We're not that militaristic. But finally time comes to gate in. What do? Get in line, and you're going to walk up. Now, generally speaking, the first person you're going to talk to when you get to gate is the person with a sign-in sheet. And first thing they're going to ask you is, for most events, not all of them have this, but they're going to ask you, did you pre-register? Some events have the option to sign up and possibly even pay online in advance. If that's the case, you will tell them, I've pre-registered or I've paid in advance or whatever, and they will have a sheet and they'll have a separate procedure dealing with transactions already made. If you have not pre-registered, or if that's not a relevant question, they'll go, how many? Now, some people may think, well, that's obvious, it's just me. Not so fair. The reality is I have not gated in about 5 years. That doesn't mean I've skipped gate. My wife, our little arrangement, logistically what we do is she will take my information, she will gate in for both of us, which she's allowed to, and I will carry heavy stuff from our car to whatever table or campsite or wherever we're setting up at. So very often she will gate in for both of us. And a lot of people do that, especially parents who don't feel like having to corral 3 or 4 kids in line. That's has its own adventures associated with it. So one of the first things they're probably going to ask you is how many people. And if it's just you, just say 1, but you may have a family of 5 or 6 or 10. You have a group of people, however many you can sign in for. Usually it's 2 or maybe 3 if you're signing in for an adult child. Now the reason I say that as far as the adult child goes, in Onsteora at least, all children are free admission to events. I don't know what it is in your kingdom. If you're not on Onsteora, that's an entirely different story. But you may need to declare 1 or 2 or 3 minor children or whatever. At which point they may also ask you, feast. Now we've talked about feast in a previous video, but suffice it to say here, some events have a separate feast available that you may pay for if there are any available. Usually it's a limited number of seats for that. And if you would like to buy that, it's an additional charge. Some events also, feast is included with your site registration. And some events will have a sideboard which includes site registration. It's not really a full meal, but it's enough to keep you from getting too hungry during the day. So you'll have to look at the event-specific details there. But the point is that those transactions are handled at gate. So they'll ask you, feast, and you can say, yes, 3 feast, or, maybe it's just 1 feast. Maybe you're their family of 4, but only one of them can or wants to eat feast, or maybe it's 3, or maybe you're picking up feast for someone else. It's just me, but I'm picking up a second feast, so 2 feast. All that's done there, and you don't have to explain why. They just feast, and you go, yes, 2 feast, or yes, 1 feast. It's usually where you say that. And at which point, the person who's filling out the gate sheet is going to tick off a bunch of boxes, and every form's a little different. We have a standardized one on Onsteora. I have no idea how the other kingdoms do it. But they're going to come up with a tally. And they may verify with you, say, okay, 1 adult, 2 kids, or 3 feast, or whatever. And, just repeat back the order effectively. And you'll say yes. And they'll go, okay, and they'll tell you the charge. All the events I've ever been to have either been cash or check. I have never personally been to an event that will allow on-site payment with credit card or any other electronic. Maybe there are. If there are, you're going to have to discover that on your own. I have no experience with it. But the majority will do check or cash. And they'll give the amount, and you'll say okay, and they'll ask, how are you paying? And if it's check, they're very likely going to rattle off, make the check out to, and they'll tell you exactly what to put in the to line. Like in my case, Barony of Wiesen or SCA, that kind of thing. You'll write it out, hand them the check, And then they're going to the check or the cash goes into the cash box. The money transaction's over. Then you go over to the signature forms. There are a couple of, now the signature forms is kind of a catch-all phrase because what you're signing may be different depending on your circumstances. When you join the SCA, there is a waiver you sign, which I'm not a lawyer, don't claim to be, disclaimer here, but I've always heard it summarized as you're promising not to sue someone else if you do something stupid. Please consult an attorney for a more accurate interpretation of that. But different municipalities, different regions of the world, frankly, may have different liability requirements. So you may have a couple different forms to fill in. I know I was at an event one time where because they had equestrian, and even though I'm not a writer, I have no interest in equestrian. I'm not part of the equestrian community, and I had no plans or even availability to go near the horses. I had to sign an equestrian waiver. So I just read the waiver, everything looked good, signed, you know. That's very rare, but that's part of that area. If you are a member, oh, by the way, when you're first gating in, they'll ask you, are you a member? I need to back up and explain that. They'll ask you, are you a member? If you are a member, they'll ask you for your membership number, and you'll pull out, sometimes it's on your phone, sometimes it's a physical blue card. We're in a transition period right now, and they're going to write your membership number down. If you're not, the price is different. There is a non-membership surcharge, and that is established by society, not the kingdom. And I'm not going to say what the amount is because I know what the amount is right now, but maybe that will change in 6 months. I don't want this video to become dated over that. So just be aware of that. But if you're a member, there's probably, I think it's the general liability waiver you don't have to sign because you already signed that when you became a member. So that's a standing signature on that. But even if you are a member, there may still be other forms that physical location, that state, that province or principality or whatever the circumstance may require you to sign. So that's where that'll be taken care of. At which point when you're done there, they're going to hand you your site token. If you've never been to an event or you don't remember the first event you went to, if this is like your second or third coming up or whatever, a site token is some little trinket. They literally can be anything. I've seen them woven. I've seen them rolled up pieces of paper. I've seen them cast, stamped. I've seen them 3D printed. It's some little thing that serves as your receipt of purchase. And depending on the circumstance, you may get one for the event. You may get one for feast or sideboard or lunch or whatever. That's a totally separate, individual by event. But the site token is cultural to every SCA group or event I've ever attended. Are there exceptions? There's exception to every rule. Let me know if you know of one. But you will receive your site token. Now, what do you do with a site token? This is actually important. I'm going to encourage you to always keep your site token on you. Now, let me be absolutely fair. Technically, you need to be able to produce that site token to prove you paid, because that is your record of purchase. I have only ever been to one event or one type of event where they would openly challenge you for your site token, and that is Gulf Wars. And that is a big deal because Gulf Wars is huge. It is a major revenue stream for a number of different groups. Multiple groups at multiple levels coordinate to make Gulf Wars happen. But most importantly, there is a not small demographic, unfortunately, who will try and get on site without paying for whatever reason, whatever immature reason they want to come up with. So Gulf Wars is kind of the statistical outlier there. That is an event where I have been challenged, hey, do you have your site token? I mean, yep, I paid. Okay, good, move on. Technically, that can happen at any event. I'd imagine there would be circumstances, very specific circumstances that are happening at a local event. But keep it in your pocket. Like, that is your receipt of purchase. Now, feast tokens are a little different. If you have purchased a separate feast and you purchase it and you get a feast token, you might be asked to display your feast token. Now, the reason why there is a slightly larger demographic, unfortunately, who, when they call for people to come sit down and have feast, without having purchased feast, will come in, sit down, and say nothing and be served a meal. And one or two is not a big deal, but there have been incidents where 20 or more people have come in and had feast without having paid, and that food ran out. People who paid didn't get proper servings. Like it was a bit of a mess. So some groups, some kingdoms do have a statement where, if you're going to, like, for example, if you're going to go sit down and have feast, please have your feast token displayed in front of you so that we know to count you. Because there are also, to be fair, there are also people who will sit at a feast table and they don't want to be served. They're like, no, I'm just here to talk with my friends, which is fine. I do that all the time. I've been to multiple events where it's like, no, I'm not eating feast. I'm just here to talk with these people. And that's great. The servers know me, and they'll usually top off my drink, and that's all there is to it. But the feast token does have a slightly more utilitarian use. You might want to, if you purchase feast, keep that on you. Also, one other thing about feast tokens, at least in Onsteora, one of the practices I've seen become more prevalent lately is the feast token is usually a little rolled up scroll with a decorative string on it. If you untie that string and open the scroll up, it is the complete menu with ingredients. And that is very, very functional for people who have dietary considerations, whether it is food allergies or general health concerns or just food preferences. This lets them look at the feast while they're on site and say, okay, I'm feeling up for this right now. Maybe they did look at it beforehand and they don't remember what the menu is. Very rarely do we do events on a full night's sleep and well rested. Especially when you get to feast at the end of the day. So that is it's very common, at least in my area, to see that. So if you get a little rolled up scroll, it's really worth it to untie it, open it up. Now maybe it's just a proverb or some cool thing, or maybe it's a blank piece of paper and just they're trying to invoke a scroll. But feast tokens have become very functional in my area, so might want to look it up and see if maybe there's useful information in there. We used to have site flyers, which was just kind of a little trifold or pamphlet or sheet of paper that talked about the event schedule and the event. It might have a site map, the class schedule, that type of thing, and that's really common for classroom events. I've actually been to a couple events now that didn't have site flyers. If there is a flyer, you will get it at site. I'm not going to set expectations that you're always going to get a site flyer. Just be aware. But once you have, hopefully, your site flyer, your feast token, your site token, and you've signed all the waivers, go enjoy the event. My real purpose for making this video is I hear us, even locally, we'll talk about going to this event or getting someone to go here or someone over here, and then they show up, and even if they're pointed at gate, no one has explained to them what gate is, why do you have to gate in, where is this money going to. It's probably the first time they've been charged to do anything in the SCA, so I want to give that context. I hope this clarifies things. I hope it's useful. I hope it is something that you can use and make your next event a little bit smoother and easier to plan for. So, speaking of events, I will see you at the next event, but until then, goodbye and God bless. If there are two things I've learned that drive videos these days, it's controversy and engagement. Now, I am never going to fly the controversy flag on a regular basis. It's not what I'm here for. It's not the content I want to make, and I really don't think it helps any of us. But let's do engagement. If you like this video, please go down in the comments and leave a comment. Make sure to share the video. And last but not least, easiest of all, make sure to like the video. That helps drive the algorithm. It helps get the video views and helps promote this material. Thank you very much.